Jessica Morden.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm really pleased to see these regulations return to the House today, and although there's still much to do, it does mark a significant milestone in ensuring that the Government delivers on its promise to work apace to establish the Infected Blood Compensation Authority and to give it the necessary powers to start making the compensation payments. And as other honourable members have said, we do need to do this to ensure that the payments are made as quickly as possible for people who have waited far, far too long for justice already. So I very much also thank the Minister for the urgency with which he has worked to progress this issue to date since coming into government. And I know he will have done so with the many stories of injustice from this long-running scandal in his mind. And he'll know, as my constituency neighbour, that my constituents, the Smiths, lost their son Colin to AIDS, aged just 7 years old. Colin contracted it from infected blood from Arkansas prison, aged just 10 months old, and it emerged during the inquiry that Colin's doctor knew about the infection risks associated with giving the blood treatments to children, but he broke his own NHS department's guidelines to do so anyway. And not only did they lose their very beloved son, but because of the stigma surrounding HIV at the time, the family were ostracised by the local community, harassed, abused, lost employment, and even had AIDS dead written in black paint alongside their house. And that's why we're here today, and that there are so many stories, and that is just why it is so important. When the final report of the Infected Blood Inquiry was published, I said to the now former Minister that the Smiths wanted Colin to be remembered and for sorry to turn into something, into concrete action on compensation without adding further to the decades of painful delay which so many victims have had to endure. So progress is clearly being made, and the Minister will also know that there are many questions that come up along the way. A lot of people are getting their information online, and I would agree with the point that we need more information for those affected families like the Smiths. So on behalf of them, can I just reiterate the point that there is still much confusion amongst the affected community about what the regulations will mean for individual people making their compensation claims. There is a bit of a feeling that compensation for bereaved parents is low, and I think it would be really helpful if more could be done to explain how compensation will be calculated. It's also really important that government engage on an ongoing basis with all those charities involved, as I know the Compensation Authority has done, and we should recognise, as has been said, a point made by a colleague from the SNP, about the massively important work those charities have done helping the infected and the affected. And I think it would also, the charities do a fantastic job, but it's also really important to know from today just how families will be individually supported and perhaps offered caseworkers to help them get them through the process. And I'd really be grateful if the Minister could talk a little bit about that. He'll also know that many of those affected, like the Smiths, have waited years for compensation, although it's not just about the compensation, it's about the justice, but that's important too. He's announced previously that applications for interim payments to the estates of deceased infected people will open this month. Can he tell us when that will be? I know he's talked about that a bit more, but confirm that. He also set out whether affected parents who are not the beneficiaries of an estate will be eligible for those interim payments. The Smiths also understand that those applications should be processed and payments made within 30 days. So if he could address that in his closing remarks, it would be great. And as also other members have said, it's clearly a really complicated system and scheme, this, and framework. So it's important today that we acknowledge that and do as much as possible to help people through that process as we can. The Minister also talked about the second set of regulations to enable compensation for the affected. Could the Minister talk a bit more in his closing remarks about the progress being made to this end and when he expects them to be laid and when those estimates? I think he talked about the 31st of March, but that would be helpful as well. And it is vital that once the Infected Blood Compensation Authority begin its work, applications can be swiftly processed without unnecessary delay. So can he reassure people by talking about the resources being made available to do that? So finally, he's obviously aware of the vital work the small charities and support groups continue to do to support those infected and affected, like the Smiths. Can I echo the points made by the Honourable Member from the SNP earlier, that their resources have been very stretched hugely in helping people, and it would be really helpful to know what funding might be available for those groups so they continue their important work. So I very much thank the Minister for his important work so far. I hope we have future opportunities to keep raising these issues as we go through those process on behalf of those who've waited just so long for this. We need to get it right, but we also need to get it done.